Okay, so we have 3/4 cup hot water, and we want our hot water in our bowl, and the water is supposed to be about 110 degrees, 110 degrees. If it's 120, I don't know what happens, but I usually try to get it as close to 110 degrees as I can. So otherwise, if it's too hot, it kills the yeast. So we're putting half a teaspoon of sugar. Can't see it. We're putting half a teaspoon of sugar in here and kind of just stir it around. If you want it to taste like Punalulu sweetbread, put more sugar. And just measure it and make sure that it's not like super cold. So when it's about 110 degrees, then this is the yeast that I use. It's instant dry yeast, and this is probably like a lifetime and a half supply right here. So you're gonna get 1.5 teaspoons of yeast, and you're gonna put it in your water. Make sure you know what temperature your water is. 1.5 teaspoons of yeast. Okay. So you just kind of sprinkle it like this. And then you leave it alone. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's ready. You're going to leave it alone for 5 minutes. You're going to leave it alone for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back. Okay, when our 5 minutes is up, your yeast should be fluffy, and I don't know if you can see it, but if it doesn't look like this and it's not fluffy, that means it didn't work right, or it was too cold, or your yeast was dead or something. So if it doesn't look like this, don't bother making your bread. Start over on your yeast. If your yeast looks good, now we're going to mix in some flour. Oh, I need my beater, don't I? Okay, we have 1 3/4 cup flour. You might not need all of this, but just mix it until it sort of looks like dough and it comes away from the edges of the bowl. So you can add some olive oil. Sometimes I don't, sometimes I do. It says 2 tablespoons, but I just dump it in there. So while you're doing this, you can already have your Okay, this is what it looks like when you have mixed your flour together and the dough is starting to pull away from the bowl. So it kind of doesn't look super wet anymore. So just keep adding your flour. Like, I have a little bit left. I didn't put it all in there. If you put it all, you can sometimes, but sometimes it gets dry. But you just want it to pull away from the bowl. It's sort of stretchy. You can use the rest of your flour, if you still have some left, to make your dough into like a patty to put in your pan. So I'm using my cast iron skillet, and it has oil in it because we don't want the bread to stick, so I put plenty oil in the bottom. And all we're going to do is make the bread into the shape of the pan. So you can either do this on like a cutting board and put oil and make it into the right shape or whatever, or you can just do it in your hands if you don't want to get your cutting board. Okay, so all we do is we don't need this dough a lot, so we just kind of squish it out into the general shape that we want. And then when we go over to our pan, usually I don't even use a cutting board for this, but I just wanted to show you. You don't want a lot of flour on it. We take it to our pan, and you can put it up the sides a little bit, but just squish it around in there so it's a nice shape. It's okay to like mess with it a little bit, but we don't want to make any sudden movements and like throw our pan into the oven or anything because it might scare the bread and make it go flat. Okay, so we're going to put it up the edge a little bit, and then we have our oven over here. It's preheating to 200 degrees. And so once it gets preheated to 200 degrees, you want to turn it off. Do not bake it at 200 degrees. So all it's doing is rising. So once it's 200 degrees, then we're going to put it in there. Probably on the lower shelf or something. And then we're going to let it rise in there and just kind of keep an eye on it. And set your timer for 20 minutes and then check on that. See how long, see what that looks like. So, see you in 20 minutes. After our 20 minutes in the oven at 200 degrees, in an oven that's turned off, we're going to take it out and make sure that it rose. You can see it rose plenty. So now what we're going to do, I don't know why you do this, but for some reason you poke holes in it. Maybe it's so the next step can go down into the holes. I don't know. So usually what we do is we mix olive oil with some seasonings, whatever you want, or not, or whatever. But this time we're going to try butter. So, put your butter, olive oil, all over the top of it. Like if you had one of those brush things, it would probably work a lot better for this, but just kind of make sure it's all over the top. And then while you're doing this, preheat your oven to 400, and when it's preheated to 400, then we're going to put it in the oven and bake it for 20 minutes. And then we're going to see what it looks like after that. After 15 or 20 minutes of baking, just check on your bread and make sure that it's looking good, and just keep baking it until it's as brown as you want it to be on top. And then usually it's really brown on the bottom too. See, it's nice and toasted on the bottom. So then just let it cool and eat it with your favorite soup for lunch or whatever you want to do with it.